today's episode of Making the Past Present, we will be making beefcakes for a side dish of prepared meat. Here is a fantastic dish that you can make for someone if they are a very persnickety eater, especially if they're little kids. This is a beefcakes as a side dish for prepared meat. It is from a new System of Domestic Cookery. Basically, you're making hamburgers. Let me explain. The recipe calls for slightly underdone beef to be pounded like you would for sausage in a mortar with a little bit of beef fat. Again, I don't like to do that because usually it's really hot, it's really nasty, really messy. So what I like to do is I will buy 80-20 hamburger. Pretty close to the same thing. A lot of the steps are taken out and I don't have to worry about how much fat do I put in. Did I put enough fat? Did I not put enough fat? It's already done for me. So what you can do, you're almost making sausage except for it's hamburger. And you can then, especially I like to make this when I know I have little kids coming and they might not necessarily like some of the things I make, or the names might scare them a little bit. Because I can tell, I'll take them all to the side, but basically I'm making hamburgers and they think it's absolutely fantastic. You can also then take potatoes and fry them and to go with it, because then it's like having hamburgers and french fries. But everybody thinks it's historically correct, because it is, it just has a different name. So what you want to start with is however much burger that you want, or let me rephrase that, forced meat, in this case beef. It calls for a shallot or garlic. Again, go to the taste of whoever you're cooking for. If they don't like shallots, don't use them. If they prefer onion, you can take the onion and chop it as finely as you're comfortable with. You can use garlic, whatever you feel like. I am going to use shallot because I happen to have some and I like them. So I'm going to use that. Again, chop it as you feel comfortable with. So you want to take the ends off. And then you want to peel them. They've got an outer skin that's really tough and not so great to eat. I'm going to peel that off. A lot of times your shallots will come in two parts like this. And then you can chop each one individually once you get the outer skin off. Sometimes that's easier said than done. Okay, and when it comes in two parts like this, I like to cut that part in half. And then again, you can cut it however you feel comfortable doing, but you want it as fine as you're comfortable chopping it as you drop pieces like that. And this recipe is really great too because a lot of it says to your taste. So you can play with it. If you want to add some spice to it, you can add some paprika or cayenne, which is more historically correct for the 18th century. You can do that. You can add sage. You can add whatever herbs you like. I like this because it just adds a very different flavor. Now, when you're done with it, it says to serve it in a good thick gravy. You can do that if you want. If you feel of interest and you want to make gravy, you can. You don't have to. Some of the recipes that I would use this with, they would take like a chicken or a turkey, and once it's cooked, they'll put it in a nice fancy looking dish and they'll pile these around with other root veggies like rutabagas and potatoes. I'm actually going to use half of my shallot. I'll save that for my egg recipe later. So now comes the salt, and it doesn't say how much, so I'm going to guess, since this is about a pound and a half of beef, not that much. I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to find my measuring spoon. That would be the smart thing to do. I'm going to go maybe a teaspoon of salt, because sometimes it just needs salt. And then I've already got some pre-ground black pepper. I'm going to say it's about a teaspoon. I'm going to just dump the whole thing in. Set that off to the side so I'm not, and then you mix it. Again, you can add other things to it if you want. If you don't like the shallots, go regular onion. You can do green onion. You could do leeks. Leeks are much milder. If it's early spring and you happen to be lucky enough to get ramps, mix ramps in it. It's whatever you feel like doing. And again, whatever spices. It looks really neat to make this. And it just fun. I had a friend who had never done any type of reenactment before, and they brought a bunch of food to help me cook, and they brought a big container of ground hamburger, and I was frantically trying to find some way to use it that was historically correct, and I found this recipe, and we made them all day long, and they looked really neat piled up in a dish. We did make gravy, and it looks kind of cool to have the gravy on top, but if you're in a hurry, you don't have to. So I'm going to say this is mixed pretty well. And then it talks about taking them and making them into links. So you take whatever size you want. I'm going to make mine look kind of like a meatball. Then I am going to take said meatball and I'm going to roll it between my hands till it kind of makes what looks like a sausage link. Or you can just kind of squish it out like this to whatever size you want. Remember, you're going to have to fry these, so you want to make sure you're going to be able to fry them all the way. Now, if you're making this during a hot weather camp, I would suggest doing it all at once. Or you can mix your meat up, put it in a cooler until you're ready to do it later on that day. And I would not leave it sit out for very long. But there you go, you can have one link. And then you gotta make all of this into these. To use a spider skillet like I have down here that for the the side dish of meat, you will want to, how I like to do it is I'll place my pan where I want it and then I will scoop my coals underneath it. For me it's a lot easier to do it that way because then I'm not trying to fight my pan to fit on top of my coals, because then your pan gets all water-jawed and then you're more likely to spill what's in your pan. So if you have the opportunity, ask wherever you're doing this at, if you're doing it over an open fire at an event, if you're allowed to pile coals outside. Some historic places don't like you to do that. So always ask first. Since I can do it here, since I have an open fire, that's how I'm going to do it. Now if you're doing it at home, you don't have to worry about it. Just do this on the top of your stove. You'll be good. So, going to get cold. And just start making a video. And I will tell you it is a very hot job to do this, so do not feel bad if you have to step back for a few minutes, because it does get very hot very quickly. And if you're going to be doing a lot of cooking like this, I would suggest finding a blacksmith who can make you a coal shovel like I am using, because it makes life so much easier, especially when you do something like that. Now I'm going to let my pan heat up to see if I need any more, and then we'll finish the recipe. So in order to finish my beef cakes as a side dish, what I've decided to do, I am going to make gravy to show you guys how to do that. So what I did was I took what was left over of the shallot that I did not put in the meat. I went ahead and fried it in the pan that I cooked the meat in. If you are using, say, 80-20 hamburger, it should have a lot of grease in the bottom of it, but I like to add a little extra just to make sure there's enough gravy, because gravy, you can never have too much of it. When you make it, a lot of recipes will say to rub your butter into your flour. And basically that means take a piece of butter, however much you want. I think this is about 4 tablespoons, close to the same amount of flour, and you literally rub it together. And it will kind of look almost like you're making pie crust. When you do that, then you want to come over and you want to drop it into your pan after you have added some type of liquid. You can add milk. You can add stock, you can go straight water, whatever you want to use. I am using beef stock since I'm using ground beef. I'm going to use beef stock to kind of keep the flavors. And there's no real measuring to this, kind of guessing and trying and guessing and trying until you have enough seasoning, enough stock, enough flour. You just kind of go back and forth. You may not use all of this. That's fine. Put it off to the side. You can use it later in the day. I am letting my beef stock come up to heat before I dump this in, because you're going to want it almost boiling, but but not quite. And then once you get it to the thickness you like, that's when I start adding salt, pepper, parsley, sage is really good. It's however you like to flavor it. I'm gonna sprinkle just a little bit in, maybe a little bit more. Because the recipe does say you want a nice thick gravy. Now this is the traditional whisk they had till about mid-1920s when the industrial process was available to actually make what we know of as a whisk today. Until then, it was a bundle of sticks wrapped together and you whisk. Oh, that's nice and thick. So cook the gravy until it starts to thicken. I would go light on the flour at first. Sometimes you can add too much, then you have to add more stock, and it can become just as back and forth, back and forth. So always start light on the flour and slowly add the flour butter mixture to it. Kind of just let it sit. It will slowly start to thicken. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt. Since I have shallots in there, I think I'm just going to leave it that. I might add a little parsley just for fun. But it's almost done. When it's done, I'll show you what it looks like dumped over the beef cakes. And so this is what a nice thick gravy will look like. I added some parsley. I might add some more. Give me just a second. I'm going to make sure I'm mixing it all in. I'm going to find a spoon and I'm going to taste it real quick, because this is the best time to season it before you put it on whatever your dish is. Careful, it's hot. Trust me, I've forgotten and I've burnt myself enough times. That's actually pretty good. Let me find, I'm going to move my stuff. So here is what the meat looks like done. So then I am going to find something to carefully ladle the gravy on the meat. Okay, so once your gravy is done, you want to grab a spoon of some kind, or if you're very brave, and if your pan handle is not too hot, which I need to, it shouldn't be, you can take it and pour it over your meat as a side dish. And you can serve it like this, or you can take it, mix it around gently so you don't break up the meat too much. You want it to stay in the nice lengths. Then you can say if you have a piece of poultry like a turkey or a beautiful piece of beef, you can take it and then stack these gently around the sides with some root veggies. Maybe make more gravy than what you did for just the meat and kind of put it over the veggies as well. And there you go, you now have a side dish. And I haven't tried this yet. So I'm gonna say before I put this in my mouth and probably burn myself, thank you so much for coming to this episode of Making the Past Present. I hope you had fun. I hope you try this. I hope whoever tries it with you has fun and enjoys it as much as I did. Until we meet again, safe travels. Oh, that is good. That is really good. Goodbye.
Duh.
That was really good.